We're going to talk about the universe and its origin. And the reason why we're talking about this is because many of us will jump into worldviews because we find it fashionable. We go, oh, everyone else is doing it, so I'm going to do it. Or our best friend is doing it. So as we talk about the universe, remember, we're looking for truth, contradictions, history. Does it make sense in the world that we live in? And we're going to verify these things to see if it makes sense. As we talk about the universe, there's two worldviews I like to bring up and talk about, though we can bring up 5 or 6, 8 or 9, but it comes down to two worldviews. It's atheism and monotheism. Now, those are two nice words to say. Atheism is a Greek underlined word. A means what? No or without. Remember that. In Greek, you always get the A for atheism means no or without. And then theism means theos, God. No God or without God. So remember, their bottom line is empirical. In other words, they don't believe in miracles or the miraculous. They don't believe in a soul and a spirit. The conscience is kind of hard to grasp. They don't like to call it a mind. They like to call it a brain because it's matter. It's something they can touch and feel and examine. Then you got the other worldview, which is theism, right? And theism, monotheism, do you guys know what the word mono means? You always have it for your speakers. One. Mono, one. Theism is God. One God. So you got another view that says one God. The reason why we go to that worldview when I'm talking to you is because we can find contradictions if we try to rely on 10,000 gods or 3 million gods. We actually have to get down to one God, and we won't talk about this today. Why? Because we need a maximum, supreme being that's a God, and that's only the monotheistic view, the monotheism, and it comes down to the Christian worldview. There's other worldviews like Judaism and Islam, who believes in the monotheism God. But then his nature, his character, who God is, begins to change. So we won't go there today. We're just going to talk about the Christian God worldview and the atheism, right? So as we talk about these two worldviews, we do both groups, both worldviews believe in science. We want to look at things and we want to see, is it testable? Is it observable? Is it repeatable when we look at things? So both worldviews believe in science. One, again, believes in empirical matter. The senses, you can touch, feel, hold, smell. The Christian God worldview says that they believe in philosophical things, things that are immaterial, like spirits, God, angels, things like this they can believe in, the immaterial world. And so we lay them both by each other and we begin to look. Now let's start off with this. Why is everyone looking for something eternal? The reason why, think about this great universe, 98 billion light years and counting. Think about how big that universe is. And here you are, this dot on this planet that brings forth life, and no other place on the universe can give us life but this planet we live in. And it's just a speck. 98 billion light years goes a long ways, guys. And here we are sitting here, yet we have life, and nowhere on the galaxies can you find life like you can on this planet called Earth. So here we are on this Earth. When we think about this Earth, everyone needs to think about something eternal. Why? Because we know as soon as you got time, where's the clock at? As soon as you get time, it starts ticking. That means something's temporal. It's counting down. As soon as you get time into the equation, you're no longer talking about something eternal. If you're talking about something eternal, there is no time. It's infinite, right? So when we talk about this universe, we know we're living inside time. But the scientists, the atheists, and the theologian wanted to question that through evidence to see if that's so. So one day, finally, this man named Edwin Hubble, he was looking through space in a huge telescope. He was actually like this, big old telescope. He's looking through space, And he sees space just moving and stretching, just going fast. And he can see galaxies. See, he didn't know there were galaxies at first, but he saw them stretching. So it's just like if I were to grab a balloon. We've all done that. Who's grabbed a balloon before and written something on it and begin to blow it up? Have you guys did that before? Grab a balloon and blow it up. What happens? It stretches out, right? This is what the universe looks like. It started off at a singularity. We both agree, the Christian worldview and the atheist worldview both agree that it started, and this is how Edward Hubble figured it out. As he saw everything stretching out, they rewound it. And when they rewound it, they found out that it had a beginning, just like a balloon does. When you put dots on the balloon and you blow it up, it stretches, stretches, stretches. You let it go. Oh, it had a beginning. That's the first time 80 or 90 years ago in 1929. Think about this, guys, because you will think about this, because you need to hold on to your worldview, whatever it is. 1929 is when they first discovered that this universe is no longer infinite, because they thought it was. They thought it was eternal. Now 99% of all scientists say, no, this universe had a beginning of time, space, and matter. Have you ever thought about that? That there was a point in time there was no space. There was no matter. We're talking about particles. There was nothing, right? It wasn't even empty space. It was empty. And that's hard to comprehend because we're always thinking about space. There's space in here, and we're always thinking of space. But there was a time when there wasn't time, space, and matter. But then all of a sudden, this singularity happened, and boom, energy came out, okay? When energy came out, it came out faster than the speed of light, and it expanded, and all of a sudden we got this universe. So now we're looking at it with scientific markers and going, okay, this universe started. It had a beginning. We all know that. We all agree on that. So one worldview says it came from nothing, the atheist worldview, and the other worldview, by the Christian monotheistic worldview, which is the Christian God, says that it had to come by a God, a mind. A mind had to create the universe. But which one is right? Which one sounds better as we look at truth, facts, contradictions, and the reality that we live in, okay? So the first clue we look in the scientific marker is a thing called everything that has a beginning has a cause. Everything that has a beginning. When you had a beginning, the cause was what? Your parents, right? Anything that has a beginning, an enchilada, a carne asada taco, a burrito, it had a cause. Who was the cause? Someone made it, and it became a burrito. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. We call that cause and effect. In order for him to put a drink in that container, he was the cause to the effect that put the drink in it. So the question is, we know scientifically every cause has an effect. The effect was this universe. Boom. What caused it to happen? We get two choices, right? It's either something eternal or it's from nothing. Okay, this is the two choices that we're looking at. The last thing I want to talk about before we go to the scientific list is this. We got the laws of thermodynamics. How many have heard that? The laws of thermodynamics. Okay, we have the first law is the law on conservation of energy. In other words, in a closed system like the universe, you cannot create more matter, and you can't get rid of it. It can dissolve, it can turn into liquid, it can turn into gases, but you don't see things dropping out of the sky outside the universe and creating more material. It's never happened. That's why we call it a law. It's not going to happen. So we know everything in this universe came from somewhere outside the universe, right? Because it had to create the universe. Something outside of her had to create her. Who was it? The parents. Something outside the burrito, bigger than the burrito, had to make the burrito. Who was it? Yeah. So this is what we're looking at for clues, scientific clues, to see what worldview are we going to stand on. So as we look at entropy, the second law of thermodynamics says everything is turning into chaos, disorder. So if you clean up your room and you set it there, You can come back a couple years later and there's dust on it, things are getting old, everything is deteriorating, everything is winding down. We know that. The energy is winding down. This universe is winding down, and we know that. So as we look at all the clues, we're going to ask ourselves, on this scale, who gives us a better inference to think about what worldview should we stand on? One worldview says that out of nothing came everything, because they used to believe that this universe was eternal. But when they couldn't find something eternal no more, what did they have to turn to? They had to turn to nothing, because that's the next thing you can do. There's nothing else to turn to. But let me ask you this question. What's the definition for nothing? What's the definition you think for nothing? If you were going to give a definition for nothing, what would that be? Void is a good one. Yes, it's hard to come up with. Nothing, Aristotle said, is what rocks dream about. Nothing. When they begin to pour something into nothing, the definition changes. It's no longer nothing. What is it? It's something. So now the atheist, who is now telling you for the longest time that everything came from nothing, has to change it, because they're getting people coming, their own colleagues coming up to them and saying, listen, Krauss, it isn't quantum fluctuations, because that still has energy. That's creating stuff. Energy is out there. So it's not nothing, it's something. And so his own colleagues are pressing the point. They know they need something eternal. Now the Christian worldview says, listen, we've always had something eternal. Genesis 1:1, right from the beginning. Think about this, guys. 1,500 years. 1,500 years before the Bible was written, before Jesus came on earth, should I say, God told Moses, I want you to write, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That means before we even scientifically knew this universe was finite, God already declared this 1,500 years before Jesus walked on earth on Genesis 1:1, the first verse of the Bible. In the beginning, God created. You know what happened as soon as he created? Time began to exist. There's time. He created. What did he create? He created the heavens, the cosmos, space. He created the heavens and the earth, matter. Right from the beginning, 1,500 years, when the world was primitive, God was already declaring that this universe was finite, and he was outside of it. He said, I am eternal, and I created this universe, and he's always said that. Now guess what? We go forward 21st century. His claims from Genesis 1:1 that was so primitive at the time has never had to be changed. As a matter of fact, the scientists had to come to his conclusion and say, oh, that you're right. There was a beginning, and now we need something eternal. But God even took it one step further, and he said, not only do you need something eternal, but you need a mind that creates information. The preconditions of intelligibility is information. We know information is everywhere. And on your DNA, it's invisible, it's written, and it's universal. We got information everywhere that's invisible. How did that information get here? Science even declares the only way information can come to be is through a mind. So here now the Christian says we got the preconditions of intelligibility, a mind. We got a God that's outside of time, space, and matter, that's eternal. And as we begin to weigh out the evidence, you need to say, I came to the conclusion that the Christian worldview has the best answer right now for how we live in this reality, in this world that we live in. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We even find it in the New Testament. First Colossians 1:17, that Jesus created everything in heaven and in earth, visible or invisible. You know why I like that he said that? Because he said visible and invisible. Because when we talk about quantum physics, it's invisible material. And here God is already declaring that he created everything visible and invisible, whether dominions, powers, principalities, that God created all things. So this is what I want you guys to do. These are the two best explanations that we can talk about how we got here. If someone is telling you that this universe came from nothing, we know already that's a contradiction. We've never seen scientifically something come from nothing. You know how hard that would be to grab nothing and now create something out of it? I mean, even when I'm doing this, I'm grabbing particles. But to actually take nothing and create something, it can't be. So you guys, this is why when we look at the universe, it matters what worldview you stand on. If you want to live in a world that doesn't have contradictions, you need to weigh them out yourself. Go and see if what I said is true and weigh those things out and come into a worldview that I would hope you could justify. And say, I live in this worldview not because you agree with me, because I see I have a good answer, and unless I got contradictions in my answer, I stand here saying that that answer is true until you can tell me where I contradicted. All right, guys, I appreciate your time. Think about those things, and that's good, right? No Q&A, right?
Yes, thank you. Now,